Introduction to Algebra, Part 4, Fractions. At the end of this lesson, you will understand how to recognize fractions and what they are, know how to multiply and divide with fractions, and also know how to add and subtract with fractions. Occasionally in equations, you'll see something like this, 45 times p over 35. You have that horizontal line. This is called a fraction. Think of the big horizontal line as a division marker. So the 45 times p over 35 is actually 45 times p divided by 35. So the top half of a fraction, that 45 times p we saw before, is called the numerator, and the bottom half is called the denominator. So if we had a fraction 45 over 7, 45 is the numerator and 7 is the denominator. Now you remember we talked about MDAS, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. With fractions, you'll evaluate the numerator and denominator separately before dividing. Think of it as like putting parentheses around the numerator and parentheses around the denominator. So 45 plus 7, or 45 plus 7 over 3 plus 6 is like 52 divided by 9. To multiply fractions is pretty easy. You just multiply both numerators times both denominators. So if you have 5/3 times 4/5, you take 5 times 4 and 3 times 5, which is 20 over 15. Or if you have, say, 4p over 5 times 3 over 2p, it's 4p times 3 over 5 times 2p, which would be 12p over 10p. So before we get into division, we need to understand what a reciprocal is. The reciprocal of a fraction is when you take the numerator of a fraction and make it the denominator, and take the denominator of a fraction and make it the numerator. So for example, the reciprocal of 3 over 5 is 5 over 3. Now to divide a fraction, you simply multiply by its reciprocal. So for example, if we have 5/3 divided by 2/4, we take 2/4 and find the reciprocal, which would be 4 divided by 2, and we take 5/3 times 4 over 2, which is 20 over 6. Now let's take another example of 4p over 3 divided by 5p over 2. You take the reciprocal of 5p over 2, which is 2 over 5p. Now you've got 4p over 3 times 2 over 5p equals 8p over 15p. Now, adding fractions is a little more complicated. In order to add two fractions together, the denominator must be the same for both numbers. So take the following example, 3 over 5 plus 4 over 7. You'll see the denominators here don't match up, so we can't just simply add. So we need to come up with a common denominator. So in order to come up with a common denominator, you have to do what's called cross multiplication. So you see this example of 3 over 5 plus 4 over 7. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take the numerator of the first number, 3, times the denominator of the second, that would be 7, and then you're going to take the numerator of the second and multiply it times the denominator of the first. So in this case, you're going to do 3 times 7, and you're going to do 4 times 5, and then you're simply going to multiply the denominators together. So you're going to do 5 times 7 and 7 times 5, so you'll notice that they're both 35. And we now take the 3 times 7, which is 21, and the 4 times 5, which is 20, and we add them together. You'll see that both these fractions now have the common denominator of 35, so you can add them together. So in this case, we've got 41 over 35. Now the question is why does this work? How can you do this? How are you doing this random multiplication? Well, remember, you look at that first number, we're multiplying 7 by 7 over 7. Well, 7 over 7 is just the number 1. 7 divided by 7 equals 1. And the second one, 4 over 7, we're multiplying times 5 over 5, which again is just 1. So really all we're doing is we're multiplying each of the two fractions by the equivalent of 1, but giving them a common denominator by representing it by the 35ths. Now, if you understood the concept of cross multiplication and addition, subtraction works the same way. So let's take the concept of 3 over 5 minus 4 over 7. You take 3 times 7, and you take 4 times 5. So you have 3 times 7 over 5 times 7. Again, remember 7 over 7 is 1. And then you take 4 times 5 over 7 times 5. And again, remember 5 divided by 5 is 1. So you get 21 minus 20 over 35, which is 1 over 35. So let's do some questions. First one, P equals 4 over 3 times 5 over 7. What is the value of P? Question 2, Q equals 5 over 10 divided by 3 over 2. What's the value of Q? Don't forget the concept of reciprocals. R equals 5 over 3 plus 2 over 7. What's the value of R? Don't forget you need a common denominator and you have to cross multiply. S equals 3 over 5 minus 2 over 3. What's the value of S? Go ahead and hit pause and answer these questions. So with multiplication, so let's take the first question. Remember, just multiply the numerators and the denominators. So we got 4 times 5, which is 20, over 3 times 7, which is 21. So P in this case is 20 over 21. Now, when we're dividing, which is the second question, which is Q, remember it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So we have 5 over 10 times the reciprocal of 3 over 2, which is 2 over 3, which is 10 over 30. So remember, when dividing, you multiply by the reciprocal. Now when adding, this is question 3, R, we have to find a common denominator. Now in this one we had 3 and 7, obviously those don't match up, so we're going to multiply the first fraction by 7 over 7, remember that's the value 1, and the second fraction by 3 over 3, which is also 1. So in that case we get 5 times 7 over 3 times 7, which is 21, plus 2 times 3 over 7 times 3, which is 6 over 21, which means we have 35 plus 6 over 21, which is 41 over 21. Now in the last equation, S, we're subtracting. Again, remember we need to have a common denominator and we need to cross multiply. So we've got 3 times 3 over 5 times 3. That's again, remember 3 over 3 is 1. And we have 2 times 5 over 3 times 5. And again, remember, 5 divided by 5 equals 1. That gives us 9 minus 10 over 15, which, guess what? We've got a negative number, negative 1 over 15. And thank you for watching Lesson 4, Fractions.